Welcome to the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast. I'm Brian Powers.
And I'm Darren McCarthy.
We're super excited to have you here today. We have a guest who is a longtime friend and longtime learning expert, 55 years in learning and education. Gayle Moyers is the owner of Moyers Learning Systems and creator and developer of Learning Ears. Two things that we're going to learn a lot about in the coming podcast episodes. And Gayle is no stranger to TV, radio, and now podcasts. 10 years of teaching reading on television in San Diego. And just to even add even more, educational therapist as well. So, Darren, I'm excited to kind of check this interview out. Tell me a little bit more about how you guys met.
So that's a really interesting story, right? So we have these triggers in our career where they become, they launch you into a whole different atmosphere. And when I met Gayle, that's exactly what happened to me. I had just finished teaching in Las Vegas, kind of finished out my contract in 8th grade. And then I moved to San Diego and I was having a hard time finding a job. So I actually opened up the Yellow Pages. Remember those?
What's that?
I opened the Yellow Pages to, Learning Center or education. And I had to walk there because it was the closest thing. I didn't have a car, believe it or not. Anyway, so I showed up to this little learning center inside a corporate building, and then there was this woman in this, teaching about 5 people. She was doing a little orientation, and she was talking about music, and she was talking about classical music and doing all kinds of different things with microphone work and way outside the box kind of stuff. And so I stuck around and introduced myself to her, and she said, "Well, what do you want to do with your career?" And I said, "I want to do what you're doing." And she said, "Well, if you work for $6 an hour, I'll teach you everything I know." And sure enough, she I don't know if she taught me everything she knows, because that's a lot. But I've been working with Gayle for about over 20 years now, which is hard to believe. But
wow.
Amazing person, and you'll see the flow of our conversation because she taught me. We're on the same page. So and we really enjoyed it. We wish you had made it. But we're going to be talking to Gayle quite a bit, through the coming days.
Yeah, she's going to get comfortable in the guest seat on this podcast as we progress. This is only episode 2 for us, but we're excited to have you here and excited to have Gayle with us. The topic you guys are covering, I know what you do this summer, and some practical. I did get a chance to listen to the podcast. Practical advice for spending the summer with your children. Some of us are lucky enough to be home with our kids during the summer, or at least have a modified schedule. Or look, you got to make the best of your time. So maybe you still have to work full time, but you're trying to schedule and figure out some things that we can do with the kids. The thing we can't do is turn the learning switch off. But Gayle, she does a great job of kind of blending the fun along with the practical, and giving us some practical tips, things that we can put into action as the warmer weather approaches and that final bell rings as the kids get out towards the end of the month.
Yeah, you'll hear that there's some real gems in there. She talks about nutrition. She talks about what to do. Basically, the main premise is about having fun. And then we talk a little bit about technology, and there's a real gem in there where she talks about not having television, right? So we're talking about do you have wireless? Do you have iPads? Do you have the iPads? Do you have all this stuff? And she brings up, well, when I was a kid, we didn't have television, which I thought was fantastic, because you could really tap into that. So when you have these conversations, there are really definitely some gems that stand out. But listen and please share any comments or questions as we go along.
So when we come out of the intro, it'll be you and Gayle talking about, I know what you did you're gonna do this summer. I knew that was going to trip me up at least once on this intro. But here we go, and when we come out, it'll be Darren and Gayle.
Let's face it, parenting is the most important job on earth. Every day presents a stack of different challenges, and more often than not, the answer is outside of the box. On this podcast, we will offer proven strategies, interview pioneers in education, give insights into how to be successful parents, and even share our imperfect experiences of being parents ourselves. We're all in on this journey, and we will span the globe to find out what is working and who has the answers. This is the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast. Here are your hosts, Darren McCarthy and Brian Powers.
Hello, Gail.
Hello, Darren. This is Gail.
Gail, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you about what goes on in the summertime. We're calling this one, I Know What to Do This Summer.
Good. Summer is proven to be one of the most important times in a child's life. Did you know that?
No.
According to Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote The Outliers, he stated in there that if we tested our children in September and then again in June, just at the end of the school year teaching period, there would be no difference in progress for lower income and upper income families and children. Everybody makes the same progress during the school year. The difference is the rich get richer because of the summer activities. That's what makes the difference.
Summer activities. And I know a lot of parents are highly involved in summer activities, and some parents are stay-at-home, some parents are working. So there's
right.
different ways they can do things, right?
And that's the dilemma. So the first and most important rule for children and parents alike is whatever we do, we have to do it with love and fun. Fun first. So if you don't love doing it with your child and have fun doing it with your child, with or without your child, first of all, the child must be having fun, the student. And secondly, the parent needs to be having fun, and also as a parent, or what would you call a CEO of raising children, of which there's no textbook, a parent needs to know that there needs to be a plan, and what makes for a healthy, productive, successful student. And so it isn't just about learning and memorizing facts. It's, are we guiding our students to learn how to learn? And so one of the first and most fun things you can do that gets you tons of mileage is cooking and nutrition, in my mind. So you could hire someone to come in and teach your child to cook, and following a recipe and watching ingredients change. For instance, an egg changes from a liquid to a solid. That's an important part of learning, that if you experience it, you then know it. If you read about in a book, you may or may not conceptualize that liquid to solid. So cooking is important, and nutrition is important.
Well, that's interesting, because my daughter's she's 8 years old now, and she really is starting to get really interested in cooking and eating different things and trying different things. And my son's kind of in a different place where he's interested in the process of how everything is made, very interested in the importance of protein, and kind of he's more calculated. And, well, what am I eating and why am I eating it for? And when you combine the two, it sounds like you can have some fun with it.
You're going to have some fun, and you're going to have some outcomes. Let me give you an example of a 15-year-old that I met with her mother. And when I do the intake forms, I always ask, what's a typical breakfast, typical lunch, typical dinner? And if you watch today, our children are basically malnourished, but we don't realize it. And proteins are critical for attention and focus. They're critical. And I asked the mother to make a smoothie with fruits, vegetables, and protein. And then I met the daughter 3 days later. She was 15, diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. And when I met the daughter 3 days later, after she'd had 3 of these protein smoothies, I call them, she told me, I already noticed a difference in school. Isn't that amazing?
That's simple, huh?
She said, I can pay attention now.
Wow.
Isn't that a wow?
It is a wow. I remember one time you had mentioned the grocery shopping piece. So, maybe we can touch about nutrition and then go on to the two other things we're going to talk about when it comes to summer activities. But when there was something you had mentioned about the way the grocery store is set up and keeping yourself on the outside aisles.
Right.
What was that about?
Well, the processed foods, like the cereals and the sauces, the salsas, and things that aren't natural, are more often on the inside. The produce is on the outside. The dairy is on the outside. That's processed, though. And you go around and you get to the cheeses and meats and that kind of thing. So your basic food groups are more on the outside of the grocery store. And the other part of that is learning to read labels. Now, you don't have labels. You actually do have labels in the bulk sessions, but they're very hard to read. But I would just simply pick up something as simple as a protein bar, a snack bar. And I even have a little magnifying glass I keep in my purse because sometimes the print is very small. But you just look at sugar. And what you're looking for is, for one serving, you don't want any more than 10 grams of sugar. Oh. And if you pick up a protein bar, it looks like a healthy snack bar. It's advertised as such. And you'll see it's 27 grams of sugar. And that interferes with attention and focus. And that causes your pancreas, especially without protein. Sugar plays havoc on your adrenaline and your insulin output. And what you want to do is keep everything balanced. So I want the children to learn the 3 basic food groups and what they're for. And, of course, the carbohydrates, you have good guys and bad guys. And so the bad guys are the same as eating sugar, believe it or not. And those are the white guys. So the difference between what you think, ask the child, what do you think is healthier? The sweet potato colored or the white potato white? And it's going to be the sweet potatoes better. Because
you could have a whole color game.
Yeah. And you can just say, which do you think? Let's go over to the snack bars and see if we can find the snack bar that has the least amount of sugar. Aha, you're the winner. You found the least. That kind of thing.
Well, it's interesting because, you go, I know our farmers market, for example, just started. So, and it's every Friday evening, and so the kids, no matter if you're working or not working as a parent, Friday evenings are typically available to you. So you can go down to the farmers market, go through all the different vendors, have a nice little social outing, have the child interact, kind of communicate with, and learn.
And they usually get to taste.
Yeah, and so that sounds like an activity. Then the other piece is you can go to the grocery store and kind of teach them where to shop and how that whole process works. And then I think about how food oriented we are as a society, and then we that whole idea of having your summer be a little bit more organized and scheduled than you intuitively would want. So for example, you have a barbecue a certain amount of nights a week, and then you had mentioned the importance of language when it comes to having a more formal kind of dinner environment. And I think what happens is parents kind of, they think to themselves, okay, the child's been really organized throughout the entire year, and now summer's a chance to basically blow up the box. And really, I think you want to settle into kind of a balance of both. But this idea of sitting together at the table and sharing communication and having, trying different foods and so on and so forth. You want to expand on that, the importance of language?
Right. And you know how important the SATs are and all of that. We're always, unfortunately, we're never taking the moment and enjoying the learning in the moment. We're always thinking of, got to get ready for 5th grade, got to get ready for 6th grade, got to get ready for college, got to get SATs. But they found out when they did studies in college that the students that started and finished the one consistent, reliable thing were children that had eaten at a dinner table with the family. That was even more important than SATs. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that's really important.
And it's part of it is that language, that communication, and that socialization where you have to take turns and you have to listen and you have discussions, which, you know, are almost, what would we say, a dinosaur now. The students are busy hiding in their phones, and there's actually, I think my goal for the summer would be to limit technology and cell phone time, and to say, okay, you can do it. Everybody can have their cell phones for the first hour, and then we park them, and we're done for the day. Just tell your friends you're going on a cell phone break. There is a form of dementia that's been identified in South Korea where the right brain is developing really well with the visual input from the technology, you know, the iPads, the cell phones, etc. But the left brain, the language brain, the thinking front zone, where you problem solve and have executive function, that's underdeveloped. It's not developed. And so as a parent, that's where you can make a difference, where you can show them that life can be more fun without a cell phone. And I think it actually is, but then I'm an old lady that's biased. But
well, it's interesting because last year I attended the daddy-daughter dance, right? And I was surrounded by all the dads. Kind of looked like an 8th grade dance where all the women and the girls are in the middle of the room having fun, and all the guys are standing with their hands in their pockets. You know, but the majority of them were actually last year were on their cell phones. And this year when I went, it was a pleasant surprise because I really only saw just a couple dads, you know, checking their cell phones, you know, sporadically. It wasn't like lost in the land that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And which is kind of, I mean, I hope that's going to be the trend, you know, but as a parent, I could tell you, like, the technology piece, when you're home with your child all day and normally they're at school and they come home, they do their homework, it's a very kind of ritualistic strategy. You know, the day is you know what the day is going to look like.
And it often doesn't have any, and it very often doesn't have any fun in it.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's the piece that, you know, it's you know, the technology brings a certain degree of entertainment for the child, but it also brings a reprieve for the parent. So it's kind of like, okay, the child's over there, even if they're working on, you know, some kind of educational software on the phones or the tablet or whatever it might be, it's kind of like, okay, while they're doing that, I can do this. And
well, here's the way to think about that. Here's the way to think about that. We had the same thing with television. I started teaching many, many moons ago. And when I was young, we didn't have television. So I had the marvelous experience of knowing what it was like to function without television and then to watch children come in with television. And I could always tell in first grade, as a first grade teacher, after 3 weeks with the kids, I could tell you who watched more than 1 hour of TV a week and who went to bed after 7:30. And the top reading group had limited television, lots of rest, consistently. And so the other thing is to realize that television and electronic games and things are passive. Now, you can say, well, you're active because you're playing a game, but they're entertainment versus engagement. And so one's more of a passive activity. The other is more active, using your brain. There's actually a website that would be good for some students in the summer, depending on the age and the ability, but they need to be supervised. But there's a program called Scratch. It originated at MIT University, and it's to teach students how to program. And it's monitored. They have people in the background monitoring what the children are producing. So if they're producing inappropriate content, that gets monitored, and the parents are engaged, and the student will get kicked off the website, actually, if they don't change.
Oh, I see. Right.
Program to let your student, if you can find things like that, but we don't want drill and kill things that aren't going to be fun. So, and the other thing is, that, when you look at, what makes successful lifelong learners, books in the home, parents that read, and children that are read to. So even now, when school or summer, where you have the child read, if they're not good readers, reading every day badly just makes them read every day badly better. But if you can read to them and then let them pick a paragraph they've already heard and let them read it back to you and compliment, that was very well done, that makes a huge difference, just that one little change. So,
well, I find that with my children, at least, like, time with mom and dad is a reward.
Exactly.
And it's not because it's so infrequent. It's just that it's fun.
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. This is kind of impromptu.
Okay.
What do you think the ideal day looks like?
In the summer? Well,
yeah, and maybe we do it for working parents and for non-working parents.
So to me, an ideal day for any age would be we all get up in the morning, even the summertime students. We don't sleep in. And we get up in the morning and there's good music on Alexa or wherever you have it. And the Advanced Brain Technology Sound Health Series is wonderful, but one of the best pieces of music they have for morning is called Inspiration. And it's part of the Sound Health Series. You have the Sound Health Series Inspiration on, and you've already planned your breakfast the night before, and one or all of you are in charge. Everybody has a little job to do. Somebody peels the banana and throws it in the mixer, or whatever you're doing for breakfast. Somebody breaks the eggs and scrambles them. Somebody gets the spinach out and throws it in the eggs. Whatever you decide. Mm-hmm. And so it's an activity that's shared and celebrating the family togetherness. And then if mom and dad go to work and the students go to childcare or art classes or baseball or camps or whatever it is they're going to do, then when you get home and get together, you just sit, and you know how the Japanese have tea when they come home? You can have like a little family ritual where you have, I don't really approve of, I never approve of diet drinks because they're bad for our brain. But, and I don't like the sugar thing again, but a little bubbly water with some natural juice in it, can be an after work drink. You know how an adult likes to come home and maybe have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee or something like that, just to unwind. But you want that coming together. And then as you sit there and you have your first time together, it's talking about, who's doing dinner and what. The kids can actually make up a schedule for the week. And
oh, that's interesting. Way to get them involved.
We had, I had 3 children, and we had 4 chore modules. And everybody in the family did every one of the 4 modules. They just shifted every week. We had a little wheel.
Oh,
and so you were on one that was cleaning the bathroom and doing a load of towels, but the kids all decided. And I've done this with families where they have, there was a wonderful book when my children were young called The Brute Family. And they ate stick and stone stew, and they grumped along, and da-ta-ba-ta-da. And Baby Brute came home one day because he had found a little lost, wandering good feeling. And he put it in his pocket and took it home. And he said something nice to the mom. And then all of a sudden, everything shifted like a mobile. And sometimes just reading that book, but I had a situation with some nieces and nephews where nobody was happy. Nobody was happy in that family. And I said, well, you give me one thing that would make you happier in your family. And the kids nailed it. They really nailed it. Mom could have nailed it, but she never stopped to think about it. And, let the kids problem solve. What would make you have more fun and be happier. I really think people need to focus on having fun. It's one of the most important qualifiers for healthy mental health, is having fun, adult or child. So I think that, and then sometimes getting a book from the library. The librarians can help you pick out books, like the Brute family. But I think the classics are the best. If the students don't have a reading list for the fall, I think if you can get some of those books and read them ahead as a family, you just read them to the students, and then everybody takes a turn and reads their favorite part after you've read.
I think a lot of families are overbooked.
Yes.
And so I, in my business practice, there's something we call the ideal calendar, which really is just block scheduling, kind of the way we used to do it, old school. And now,
is it a day by day or a week by week or a month by month?
You stare at the week and you say, okay, well, I want to do these 5 areas are our biggest concern. You're always going to have like things, in business, it's checking emails and outbound calls. And with your family, it looks totally different. But there should be basically 5 blocks. And I'm hearing from you, nutrition is a block. And, whether you're actually physically eating or you're shopping or you're learning, that's kind of a block. And then it sounds like there's a fun block. So in my house, we're big on, trampoline time, although it, kills me trying to keep up with an 8-year-old on a trampoline. But hey, listen. And then fun can be blocked into different things. Obviously, when you're on vacation, it's different. There's more fun than other stuff. But what do you think about 3? Like, sounds to me like reading is another, or academia. When you talk about like doing,
I wouldn't even do academia. I would just say reading. And if students are strong readers and enjoy reading, you have a different mindset. If they don't enjoy reading, then you want to kind of take the reading over. And what I suggest here is that you get a really good book, like look at the Newbery Award winners. The library will have you can Google them now. You have a list of the Newbery Award winners, because these are the books that were voted on by the children. And you take a book like Where the Red Fern Grows, which has a video or a movie that goes with it. And what I do is you watch the movie together, and then you read the book to the children, and then the children can take turn reading to you too. And sometimes it's better if you have 2 copies, if you have students that aren't as secure in their reading. And if they don't know a word, just tell it to them. When you're reading a story, it's not about sounding out words. It's about reading for meaning. And that's what you want your child to absorb. It's the fun of reading, the getting the story. And all stories teach children to problem solve. Children need stories and literature as much as they need food. And they process psychologically through the main character resolving his conflicts. So then we don't get into this thing of, well, I don't like you, I'm going to shoot you kind of thing. It's, I don't like you, how could I like you better? Because all of the traditional stories, and a lot of the schools aren't using those books anymore. And they're precious. They're precious cargo. Myths are sometimes too sophisticated. But just traditional stories like Charlotte's Web and Where the Red Fern Grows and Moby Dick. And
it sounds to me like we can actually have a whole other podcast just speaking about reading and reading assignments during the summer and how to best integrate that in a fun way. It sounds so reading, nutrition, fun.
Is activity and play. And so maybe you take your children out to a line dance class, and you all do it as a family. Motion and activity are critical to brain development. They're critical. And so anything you could do together, like if you have one child and he likes tennis and you can take a tennis lesson with him, rather than doing it to him and for him, do it with him. And you can have a lot of fun that way.
Well, it's interesting listening to you, to you speak about some of these basic fundamental elements that we all need, physical exercise and obviously nutrition and all these things give you energy, which in turn is what a lot of us parents are looking for. Where do I find more energy to keep up with my child? So, and, live a healthy lifestyle. And it sounds like if that's what the summer premise is all about, everybody will be in better shape physically, emotionally, and sounds like cognitively. That's great.
And think about it this way, too. There was remember Stephen Covey? He wrote the book First Things First.
Absolutely.
And the interesting thing about him was, again, it wasn't a day-to-day agenda, but you talk about the children being overscheduled. The parents are overscheduled. And you'll notice how many friends do you have and do I have where the person can sit and enjoy each other with you. I mean, I even have a family member where I said, can't we just sit together for 10 minutes and love and enjoy each other? Oh, I can get this done. I can get that done. And so you're never committed to being present. And think of present, P-R-E-S-E-N-T, with a big bow around it. It's in a box, and it's a wonderful thing, because that ability to be present and to listen and respond with all of your heart and soul and mind to the other person gives them the thing you want them to have, is the affirmation. I'm okay, I'm wonderful, I'm good. And they can't get that on their own. In fact, they'll usually end up with the wrong idea. So we want to take our children and reaffirm that they were born perfect, they're born lovable, and if things are hard, that's okay, they get easier. You kind of take that approach, and we're going to have fun doing it.
That sounds great.
Yeah. And all right. We should have a way where people can ask questions, too. And don't think this is my motto. We create the life we live. So if you're living a grumpy life, you have all the power and all the ability to make it a different life. It doesn't depend on anybody but you. And if we can do that as parents and adults, our children will learn from our model.
That's a great way to wrap it up on this one. We appreciate your time this week. We're hoping to come back to you. Obviously, we'll talk about reading over the summer. So much to talk about, so much to cover. And obviously we have, we know you're on Facebook. You're going to be coming out with a book soon covering your learning years and some of your career. And so we're going to have a separate webinar to discuss that. And we're just going to get this information out there about the summer. And everybody can look back out for us on the next podcast. Thanks for your time, Gail. We'll be getting back to you soon.
Well, thanks for checking in with me. My pleasure.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So much for listening to this episode of the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast with your hosts, Darren and Brian. Find them on social media at Sound Foundations for Parenting. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And we'll catch you next time on the Sound Foundations for Parenting podcast.